Well, Rob, I'm really excited for our conversation today because I'm a huge fan of Sizzlefish. I actually recently heard about you guys, I want to say 2 or so years ago, and you have become my primary fish supplier. I look forward to my monthly deliveries. I recently tried the Chilean sea bass, thanks to Sarah, but I'm always experimenting now with fish, different fish recipes, and it's fun to create content on WellnStrong. But super excited to just sit down and chat with you today on all things fish. And also, too, I'm really curious about your journey in creating Sizzlefish. So with that, Rob, let's just kick it off. And I'd love to find out, how you found yourself in this space and what inspired you to start Sizzlefish.
So I guess, if we go back to my background in fish, I actually grew up on the water. I grew up at the mouth of the Chesapeake Bay, and my next door neighbor was a commercial fisherman. And I had no intention of ever having anything to do with fish. But from the time I was 3 or 4 years old, I was over on his dock every morning because it was a really interesting place to see all kinds of fish, crabs, an occasional shark. It was a kid's dream. So,
Sure.
So I had a great interest in fish and was a fish eater from a small child. And fast forward to engineering school, business school, and then I got in the seafood business, believe it or not. And kind of happenstance, but got into wholesale seafood and had a 30-year career in that. And we sold a lot of fresh and frozen fish. And we, in our freezing product and packaging product, we actually had a line at Whole Foods Market that lent itself to expanding on portioned, vacuum-packed, frozen product. And I realized we have a platform that we could be online with. And
Right.
So I actually was jogging one day and really started thinking about it and thinking, we could do something like Omaha Steaks, and this was over a decade ago, with seafood, and we have all the ingredients, and between me and other people on the staff, we have about a century's worth of fish experience, and knew all these people from all over the world that are in the seafood business, and so let's try to put something together. And it took about a year and a half to really get it started. And then it took, I guess, what most people find when they start an online business, you think, oh, wow, well, sales hopefully are going to take off. Well, no, they don't. They go pretty slow at first. But
I know, right?
Yeah.
Rob, question for you. What did you study in business school?
So I got an MBA, and I studied finance, and what I should have studied the whole time was marketing, because that's sales and marketing are the driving force of business.
So true. I mean, a little bit about myself, Rob. I'm not sure if you're familiar with Babson College in Wellesley, Massachusetts, right outside Boston. Yeah, that is where I did my undergraduate degree at Babson, and I studied finance and economics. Yet here I am, 8 years later, talking to you in the wellness space. I started WellnStrong because of my mom's journey with stage 4 breast cancer. But it's funny because I look at my time at Babson. I mean, they're known for entrepreneurship, but to your point, my marketing classes have come. I would say that's probably like the most helpful undergraduate courses I've taken looking at my business now. And certainly I've self-taught myself a lot over the past 4 years, but you are so spot on with that marketing bit.
So one of the things that's always interested me and been a part of the excitement of seafood is the fact that it's so healthy. And that's not new knowledge. That knowledge has been around for a long time. Back from the days that moms fed kids cod liver oil and that kind of thing. But, the knowledge about omega-3 fatty acids. My dad was a physician, a department head at a medical school. My older brother was a physician. And the two of them talked me out of med school when I was in undergrad. And on bad days, I still curse them for that. But it's been one of those things that makes work rewarding to know that what you're doing is good for people. The end product is a really important part of what we're doing. So, and
Absolutely.
I think that, the people that buy our products are typically people who are 30-ish to into their 70s, and they want the health benefits of seafood, and they also want a great meal experience. And so we want to provide that with the best all-natural seafood that's going to taste the best, which is the, top of the catch, primo stuff that's been portioned to meal size and handled well and delivered to them.
No, absolutely. Rob, I am curious, prior to starting Sizzlefish, what was your diet mostly like? Like, were you more of a meat eater, and did Sizzlefish change that, or?
Yeah, I come from a family where high cholesterol and high triglycerides are pretty standard. And, I've always been sort of a health nut. And so in my mid-20s, when I started business, I was running and thinking that I was eating well, and I was eating rice and peas and things that I thought were good, and red meat and chicken, but a lot of white carbs, I guess, that I didn't understand what that was doing. And then as I became more educated and I started eating fish at least 2 or 3 times a week and eating less of those high glycemic foods, I saw a major change in cholesterol and triglycerides. And so, yeah, that's been, as I've gotten older, that's become more and more important to me. And so it's been a game changer. So,
yeah. On a personal note, I had my APO B tested. So I'm 29, and my APO B, Rob, was pretty high. It was like 109 for a 29-year-old relatively healthy female. So I really reduced my intake of saturated fat. I really cut down my meat and, again, replaced it with fish. And over the span of, I want to say, 2 months, that level dropped about 30 points, which is wild, which just goes to show the power of dietary interventions. It's awesome. Wild. And also, too, Rob, you touched on a few health benefits. I mean, there are a lot of epidemiological studies that have consistently shown, that higher fish consumption leads to better memory. What are some other, benefits of including more fish in your diet? And you mentioned the benefits for cardiovascular health. Is there anything else you want to include in that group?
Yeah. So, omega-3s are not only good for cardiovascular health, they're good for respiratory function. They may be good for cognitive function as you get older, and may be good for fighting off dementia. And then, just the protein, no or low saturated fats, and then protein that obviously is, muscle, bone, blood, building hemoglobin, and then, a variety of vitamins and minerals that are, some of which are hard to get in the diet, like selenium, zinc, iodine, B12, a lot of vitamin D. So, it's a great food, I think, all around. I think, to me, one of the great studies to look at is the long-term Adventist study, because they do a lot of studies on vegetarian diets, but included in their study is breakouts of vegans, lacto-ovo vegetarians, and a pescatarian, all compared to a non-vegetarian diet. And if you read the data, the lowest mortality group are the pescatarians, lower than vegans. Yeah. So, I've got to believe that that's an omega-3 factor in large part.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Interestingly too, Rob, one thing that I learned, and this is just from a history of some pretty bad concussions, non-sports related, that's the irony, but through my own concussion history, I've obviously have learned about, the benefits of omega-3s for brain health. And they've done studies too of people who experience traumatic brain injuries who supplement with high-dose fish oil within 24 to 48 hours of that injury, and they experience significantly less you could say lasting side effects from the concussion. And it's just wild to me how, again, just the power of high dose fish oil, even in reversing TBI and related symptoms, it's super powerful.
Well, I've learned something there. That's something I didn't know about, but that is pretty exciting.
There you have it, Rob. Also, too, in terms of looking at like the diversity of fish, what would you say is the healthiest fish? So I have just read, from my own research that salmon is kind of considered like one of the healthiest fish due to its high omega-3 fatty acids, its protein content, all of that. Is that true? Does that hold any weight?
I think the fatty, colder water fish in that category in general, and you can say that that's, of the various species of salmon, king salmon probably consistently has the highest omega-3s. But if you look at the sablefish or black cod, that's probably a higher omega-3 fish.
Interesting.
Yeah. Huh. And the Chilean sea bass is a very high omega-3 fish and a great fish. And a lot of older people will say, well, the Chilean sea bass, that's one of those fish that is overfished. And that's the story of 25 plus years ago. But a lot of folks read those headlines back then, and they don't know that now it's a very well-managed fishery. If you're sourcing MSC certified Chilean sea bass, which we are, and I got to believe every American company is. That's a highly managed, studied fishery, and so you can buy it and feel good about it.
Huh. Speaking of fisheries, Rob, I know nothing about this whole industry. So how do you go about sourcing your fish? And are there certain areas of the world, I guess, where like the fish quality is higher than others? I mean, we hear about like wild caught Alaskan salmon. Like, is it really from Alaska? And is that perhaps the best area to recruit salmon from?
So the thing about fish is that the different species are located in different parts of the world. And so there really aren't any ubiquitous fish. There are warmer water fish that frequent certain areas and colder water fish that frequent certain areas. And so you have to source fish where those fish are. And so Alaskan waters are a unique fishery that just it's so productive and so well kept, well managed fishery, natural environment. It's just a great fishery for the fish that are there, which are, traditionally 4 different species of salmon, black cod, halibut, the various king and snow crab that are there. It's just a great source of great seafood. However, so are the other oceans for their particular species, and the North Atlantic has cod and haddock in abundance. I recently visited our supplier in northern Iceland.
Wow.
And
that must have been a fun trip.
Winter. Next time I'm going to go in the summer, but it was an adventure.
Bring me next time, Rob. I'll come. I've always wanted to go.
There was about 5 hours of daylight. The sun peaked at noon, about 5 degrees off the horizon. But a really interesting place. And Iceland has a really well-managed quota system on its fishery with just the same kind of abundance as Alaska does. In fact, my guide there, his brother-in-law runs a whale watching business and reported that he had 100% success whale watching in 2024. Every time he took people out, there were whales. And
that's wild. That's awesome. That's so cool. That's got to be fun to visit the different locations. I had, I don't know if you're familiar with Purity Coffee, but I had the founder Andrew on last year, and he was just sharing with me his experiences in traveling to all the different like coffee farms across the world. And I have had to think, he's like, yeah, it's probably one of the most fun aspects of running my coffee farm, so running my coffee business. So to you, I'm sure you visited some very cool places.
Yeah, I have, and southern Brazil, different places in Europe, a variety, Central America, a variety of places over the years. And I guess the most important thing about seafood is it's a small enough industry where the best quality players meet each other, if that's the sector that they're in, and then it trails off from there in terms of quality and volume. Yeah. But we've met over the years, over decades, the top producers in their category, often at trade shows, whether it's here or in Europe or wherever, and then formed friendships and maybe eventually got into business together that way. So it's a fairly small sphere of people that are doing what we want to be partners with.
Right. What separates, Rob, those top producers? Like, what are some of the practices that they implement that separates them, that makes them the top producers? Like, what do you look for when partnering with them?
It really starts with handling when the fish are caught, or shellfish are harvested, and how quickly are they processed? How quickly are they frozen? In general, the highest volume producers are not the highest quality producers. So they're going for a different market. And maybe the biggest box retail sellers. But it takes a study of what happens between catch and the time that it's frozen and we portion it and ship it out. That's the key. And then it's on us. We've got to take it and make the customer satisfied, get it there via FedEx or UPS and to someone's door. And that's not always as easy as it seems, especially this time of year. January, February weather into the Northeast and even in March can be tricky, and into the northern Midwest. So there are a lot of moving parts for what is not a huge business. We're a relatively small team of people, and some of them, and there are half dozen of us up front here in the operations center, and 24 people in fulfillment.
The logistics of it. I know, Rob, every time I get my Sizzlefish monthly delivery, I mean, I'm just in awe because everything's packaged so perfectly. Obviously it has ice, and like that stays a really long time, but I just think logistically, like, how do you guys like manage to do this so well? And I'm sure there's been a lot of time and effort into, making that process as easy as possible, but it's certainly a lot. I can't imagine.
So what's your favorite way of preparing fish?
Rob, that was one of my questions for you, actually. But I love just baking fish. I'm sure you've heard of Jazz. I can't recall her last name. She's an Instagram food content creator, but she has recently gotten me into air fryers and making my fish in an air fryer, which is a game changer. But I love experimenting, even just with different bowls. So some of the recipes I've been making are like salmon bowls with quinoa, vegetables. Sarah Caselli got me into kind of meal prepping. So that's been on my list every Sunday. I'll just make a batch of fish and then just kind of make my bowls throughout the week. But there are so many great recipes. I did make salmon tacos on Sunday. I will be sharing that on WellnStrong's Instagram at some point soon. But
awesome.
They're pretty tasty. And one thing too, Rob, that I really love is the fact that, I prefer wild caught seafood, and I love that Sizzle offers, a big range to choose from. But with that too, I know a lot of my followers always ask, what's the difference between wild caught and farm raised seafood from a nutritional standpoint? Can you touch on that?
Yeah. First of all, I would say that from a taxonomy standpoint, fish and shellfish in finfish alone, there's more difference between different species of fish than there are between mice and elephants. They're very different animals. So their dietary requirements are very, very different. And the farming that is done varies wildly because of that.
Right.
The biggest species of fish that's farmed is salmon. There's always a lot of controversy around that. And I guess I take what I think is a practical view of that, in that there are people doing that wrong, but there are also people doing that right. And if you look at land animals, we wouldn't for a minute think that it was right to only eat wild animals. And if we did, if human beings ate wild animals, we'd eat them all off the planet in less than a year. That's the scale of that. Wow. So if it's done in an environmentally conscious way, and the food supply is a good one, and antibiotics and chemicals aren't used, then I think that may be a viable way to go. So we have farmed Atlantic salmon, just like Whole Foods Market and other natural grocers carry and sell a lot of, and it comes exclusively from the Faroe Islands. And if you study what happens, how they farm the Faroe Islands, it's illegal to use antibiotics and other chemicals, and their main source of protein is fish that is caught as part of a quota system, so that it's environmentally stable. Capelin, herring, and that's their main protein source in the feed, and it's made locally. So, and it tastes great. And frankly, my wife and I eat king salmon from Alaska and sockeye salmon, but we also eat Atlantic salmon, and we do it because we believe it's a healthy product.
Right. Rob, quick note on that. I was just going to say, quick note on the Faroe Island bit. My parents and I were in Isle of Palms, I want to say a year or so ago, and we discovered this local fish market, and for the first time ever had Faroe Island salmon, and we could not get over it. And my dad, who previously was never a huge salmon fan, tried it. He was like, I would eat this every single day. But that was kind of our first introduction to it. But it is one of my favorite fish. Sadly, I can't really get it around here aside from Sizzle, but it's an amazing fish.
And it's super good. And so, the other farmed species that comes to my mind is farm-raised trout. We source all rainbow trout. Anytime you see rainbow trout on the menu, that's farmed, and it's done on small farms, whether it's in the U.S. or in South or Central America. And we source ours from actually somebody that I knew prior to ever doing any trout business in the Andes in Colombia. And it's it's such a rudimentary process there that they're also making their own electricity with the water supply that they're farming the trout in. But
that's impressive.
It's super healthy. I know they've never used any antibiotics, and it's a good, mild, white-meated fish.
Yeah. Rob, I'm going to take advantage because I have you here on all my fish questions. One other area I'm really curious of your thoughts on is mercury, right? And I feel like there's been a lot of hype around, why there are certain fish that we should perhaps be limiting, right? Like larger fish, because they tend to accumulate more mercury. What are your thoughts on that?
So I think that's pretty well listed out for you in terms of tuna. They're the fish that feed high on the chain. They've consumed medium-sized fish,
right,
and very small fish, and they tend to be fish that can be older too. So we're looking at particular mackerel, tuna. I'm trying to think of.
Those are pretty much the main two I've heard: tuna and mackerel, swordfish. Yeah.
Sword, and then I'm trying to think of the other one, the tilefish. And
interesting. I've never heard of those.
Yeah, tilefish is something that you're not going to probably source typically anyway. But so I think it's important to limit the amount of those fish that you eat.
Yeah.
And I think that tuna is the lesser of those. And I'd encourage anyone who's concerned about that to, Google is your friend, and you can find a lot of factual information about that. But particularly, childbearing women who are pregnant ought to be concerned about that. On the other hand, they ought to be eating a lot of fish because, for development of babies, it's really important for, give your kid the best chance they can, and brain health is part of the omega-3 success story.
Absolutely. I am curious too, Rob, what are some of the most popular products at Sizzlefish, and why do you think they resonate so much with customers?
Will and I go back and forth about this.
I love
because
Will.
you don't know whether it's cause or effect. People love Alaskan salmon in particular, but they love Alaskan fish. Yep. And so they love our king salmon.
Yep.
And I'm not always sure if they love it so much because we promote it a lot, or
chicken or the egg.
Chicken or the egg. And so we sell a lot of that, but we also sell a lot of our sea scallops.
I love those.
Yeah, which are caught between where we are and George's Bank, somewhere along there where the scalloping boats are working. I mean, they are, to me, super good. I love sea scallops. Cod and haddock are really popular. Mahi is becoming more and more popular. Our lobster tails and shrimp. We've got several varieties of shrimp, and depending on how you're going to prepare shrimp and what exactly you're looking for, they're really all good. The Gulf shrimp that we carry is peeled and deveined. We've got Carolina shrimp that are caught, very close to here.
Really?
That are shell-on shrimp. So if you want to prepare, peel and eat shrimp, they're super good. And if you haven't had any of those, we're gonna have to get you some.
I would love to try that. Rob, where are you based?
So we are in a little town called Ayden, North Carolina. We're very close to the Pamlico Sound as it opens up toward the Outer Banks.
Okay. I've heard the Outer Banks are beautiful. I am in Greenville, South Carolina. I know Will is in Greenville, North Carolina, but I moved here from Boston almost 3 years ago, so I'll have to come pay you guys a visit.
Yeah, you'll have to do that. We had an intern one summer that came from Austria.
Wow.
And he didn't speak English that well, and he flew to Atlanta and said he was flying to Greenville. Well, he flew to Greenville, South Carolina. And ended up coming into town on a Greyhound bus many hours later.
Oh my goodness. I know it's a solid, 6-hour drive. I think I tried to map it one time when I was talking to Phil. I was like, how far are you? Yeah. That's funny. But no, I heard the Outer Banks are beautiful. And then during my time in Boston, obviously Boston's a huge seafood city, right? So I was exposed to haddock for the first time. I miss my Boston seafood, but thankfully I have Sizzle to keep me on par with what I previously used to eat.
Yeah. Excellent.
Rob, other question for you. What are your thoughts on the future of the seafood industry, particularly regarding sustainability? Because I feel like that's also a huge, within every area, right? Everyone's focused on sustainable practices and whatnot. And curious of your take.
Well, it's, I think there's so many great stories about how the U.S. has handled fisheries management very well, and Alaska is a great example. Iceland and its fishery management, and Europe as well. But then on the other hand, it's hard not to call out China for overfishing in the South China Sea, and Russia's done its fair share of overfishing and doing what on the global industry calls illegal fishing. So I think that's much more contained than it was. It still goes on, but I think that over the past, and I can't believe I've been in the fish business 40 years this year, but
that's wild.
In that 40 years, I think that although it's very complex because of the wild differences in species and resources, it requires a complexity to the management and quotas and catch methods. I think it's working, and it's so much better than it was when I started in the fish industry. And I think that's going to continue. And science has to lead the way. We can't be part of an anti-science society. So I think it's going to get better. I think, it's a weird time in the world, and it looks like actually population growth has tailed off to where humanity is not growing at the rate it was 20 years ago. So if that's the case, and we can manage the resources like we're doing now, and maybe some of those countries that haven't been doing an adequate job of it, maybe they start getting better.
Right.
We're not in a bad place.
Yeah. All right. That's encouraging to hear. Kind of shifting, Rob, from discussion on fish to more of the entrepreneurial part of the business. Asking for myself here too, because right now with WellnStrong, so I left my full-time job. I worked at Fidelity Investments for 8 years, left them in December. Now I'm doing WellnStrong full-time. I don't have a team. My team is me, myself, and I. And I've been struggling lately just with figuring out kind of what path forward I want to take my business, right? They always say if you're chasing 2 rabbits, you won't catch either one. And I feel like I have 10 running around right now. So for you, how did you manage like your focus in building this business? Like, how did you figure out, I guess, like what framework did you use to prioritize exactly that, like your focus areas for your business and, where you wanted to be?
Well, I'll admit that I've chased multiple rabbits at times, and I don't spend a lot of time thinking about playing shoulda, coulda, woulda.
Right.
But the reality is, I think you're exactly right. The more that you can focus, the better. There's the tendency to see so much work to be done and to try to get all the work done rather than prioritize what's key to success. And the bigger the business gets, the more bureaucracy there is, so that there's always this paperwork to be done. And I think the key is to have regular points in time where you go back, and for me, and I don't do it as formally as I used to do it, and I should, but when I was starting out, I would, I've always kept, of course, I'm old school, so I've always kept a daily log that way.
Same, Rob. Same.
There you go. That way you don't forget. I tend to forget a lot of the little detailed stuff because if you're working on many different subjects, you have to be able to go back and frankly, there are times where somebody says, "Well, no, I never said that," and then you can go back and say, "Well, yeah, you did."
Yes, you did.
Here it is.
Yeah.
And that's important. But I would take that and at the end of the week, I would read through the days and then I would look at, okay, what were my priorities? And, have I made any progress on those? And then I'd make out a schedule for the next week.
Right.
And
yep.
Yeah. And
did you structure your days? Like, did you have dedicated tasks for each day? Because I know there are folks who do that. James Clear talks about that a lot.
Yes. Yeah, I do that, and I try to keep the decks clear on Mondays and Fridays so that I can get Monday. I have a lot of scheduled things, and Friday I want to be able to clean up, and work on the things that leaves unscheduled time to work on whatever needs
and
to be.
And also too, like I've been trying to figure out, okay, what actual tasks are going to move the needle, right? Because I feel like as in content creation, you could spend hours creating social content and on social media, which I have a love-hate relationship with. But at the end of the day, it's like, is this really moving the needle on my business? And if the answer is no, then you kind of have to revise your strategy. So yeah, I've just been I'm a work in progress. I've been doing this for, almost 3 months now full time. But it's certainly
you're just getting started.
It's been a journey.
Great.
Thanks, Rob.
Yeah.
I appreciate that. Yeah, I started my blog back in 2020. So the blog itself is almost 5 years old, but it's nice to be able to just focus on one thing, since leaving my full-time job, just to spend all of my energy on this. Go ahead.
I was just going to say I was a voracious reader and always have been. But, in the beginning, I read every entrepreneurship book and probably more than those, I enjoyed biographies or autobiographies of people who started and grown businesses. And, I still do that occasionally, but I got a lot out of those. And, I can say I've kept an open mind and an open eye when I've been around other businesses. And, what's weird is a couple of times people that I really didn't like or even didn't respect had some things that the way they did things that made a lot of sense that I borrowed from. So you got to keep an open mind about, you never know when you're going to find something that really works for you.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah. Learn from the best and just kind of, did you have a partner when you first started Sizzlefish, Rob, or were you doing this on your own?
This was, what we've got is a production operation, and so there was a capital requirement, and so I recruited my father and a couple of his friends to be partners with me, and I have to say that they were very patient. Startup businesses that have some capital intensiveness to them usually require more than you thought they would, and mine did. It took a while to turn. Seafood industry is cyclical because it's a food business, and so prices versus costs aren't always in line. So so I did, and I still do, but I've got significant share of it at this point.
Yeah. And you were in your 30s, correct? When this was like really getting off the ground?
Yeah. I started in my late 20s.
Did you have a board of advisors or a mentor who helped you? Because that is something I'm also seeking to hopefully create at some point in time.
We were an active board. I and my dad, the folks that invested. I mean, we would meet every 2 months, probably in the first years, and I'd give a fairly formal presentation, and we'd kick around stuff, and I'd talk to them on the phone. Mentors were usually other people that were in the seafood industry, and people that I still have some of those relationships going on 40 years later, and still, and made some really good friends in Europe and South America, and so Canada.
That's awesome.
So, yeah,
Rob, I might recruit you to be on my advisory board, so stay tuned.
Okay, that sounds good. I'd be glad to do it.
No, I appreciate that. And Rob, what advice would you give to an entrepreneur looking to enter the food industry? Because it is its own beast, as you know.
Yeah. I'd say it's probably the same as any industry, that energy counts as much as brains does, and energy and focus. It's like good salespeople who often who often rise to the top because they stay positive even in the face of, you get knocked down 9 times, and then on the 10th time you make a big sale.
Yeah.
They used to say in the oil business, drill 8 or 9 dry holes and then you hit a gusher, and you have to be willing to take the bad days along with the good. And one of the things I was going to say earlier is, I think that a good rule is, and that I read from somewhere, got from someone, is you need to be spending, if you're at the head of the organization, you need to be spending at least 50% of your time working on opportunities, not all problems. So, because if you're just working on problems all the time, you're bailing water, and you're not going to grow. So.
Right. Yeah, that's so good. Yeah, something I've been considering more deeply is just outsourcing a lot of the work that I'm doing, right? Like the administrative tasks or content editing, so I can focus on future opportunities. Something I read recently too, a quote was, it was like, startups fail, but founders don't. And that also really stuck with me because, again, I mean, part of being an entrepreneur, it's trial and error, right? And figuring out what works and what doesn't. And you really can't be afraid to fail. And something Babson taught us was this concept of ET&A, entrepreneurial thought and action, right? And failing forward. So I'm in the stage now where I have a lot of potential opportunities. And I'm just reminding myself it's okay to fail forward, right? Because that's truly how you succeed ultimately at the end of the day.
It's got to be part of the culture and the mindset. And it's funny because in grad school, I ended up at University of Texas in Austin, and the culture in Texas was an entrepreneurial one, which was probably born of the oil industry and probably cattle ranching before that. But, there were people that they failed at one business, dusted themselves off, and were back at the bank within a couple of years. And my Virginia upbringing, it wasn't the same as that. So it was an experience, and really one that a visceral one. I could tell it was different. So
yeah. Were any of your grandparents, Rob, entrepreneurs? Because I mean, you come from a family of physicians, so I'm just curious, like, where you got this entrepreneurial spirit from.
I think I was the high energy kid. Family of 4, and I was the third kid that was. I was off on a boat, and nobody knew it when at a young age, and that's really where it came from. My one grandparent was,
okay,
he was, so
that's something I always find fascinating, is reading about like the families of very successful entrepreneurs, because I'm always wondering, like, where did they get it from? My sister, Rob, we're completely opposite. She does tax law, which is very corporate minded, like very 9 to 5. And here I am, trying to get out of the corporate life from the moment I step out of college. But yeah, it takes a certain person. Again, the mentality of fail forward and resilience and grit is what I always tell folks when they're considering starting their own venture.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. That's what I was saying. Being ready to apply energy even when you don't want to because you had a really bad week.
Right.
Is what you got to do. And usually startup businesses, there are periods where you're going to be waking up in the middle of the night at two in the morning, and you're going to be doing all this dollar crunching in your head.
Yep.
It's never as bad as you think it is. When you wake up, it's not as bad. All you did was lose sleep. So you got to figure out how to control that.
So true. So true. Rob, you should write a list of like your 10 key takeaways over the past, 40 years of just doing this on your own and sell it. I'll help promote it.
Yeah. Yeah. My wife tells me that I need to write a book. So.
I think you should. I'll have you back on once it's actually published. But looking ahead, Rob, I want to be conscious of your time. I know we're nearing the hour, but what are your goals and aspirations for Sizzlefish in the coming years? Any new things on the horizon you'd like to share?
So Will and I are talking about this constantly, and we want and really need to continue to grow the way that we have been. We're constantly looking at new products, but at the same time, we don't want to get overloaded with products that people only want a little bit of. So it's a constant evaluation process. And the thing about seafood is it's seasonally supply limited, and there are shifts in supply year by year depending on how much sockeye salmon, for example, is caught during the season. And then you've got to adjust and say, well, we can't sell as much as we did last year, so we're going to have to sell more of something else. So there's a lot of that. But in general, growth so that we can, refine and improve constantly our sales and marketing piece of the equation. Also packaging. One of the things I've got to acknowledge is that we have eco packaging. It does not operate it nearly as efficiently and as effectively as styrofoam does. And that's an issue. And I think you'll find, our competitors, and the same thing in, the other food industries, there are times of the year where we have to use styrofoam because it's just too hot and the dry ice melts. And you really haven't done anything successfully environmentally if you have to reship packages because everything melted and the customer's unhappy and you've just thrown away products. So that's not good either. So we are trying to improve the eco packaging that we have, and there are being advances being made in that world, but they're not where they could be. So that's something that's constantly on our minds.
Yeah. Opportunity right there. Well, let me know if I could help brainstorm anything. But that's awesome, Rob. Where can listeners find you and learn more about Sizzlefish?
So sizzlefish.com is the best place to go. And, please check out not only our products, but we've got some good articles.
Great blog posts. Yes.
Yeah. Thanks.
And recipes.
Great recipes, I think. So, and I think of recipes, it's funny. My wife is a recipe follower, and I think of it, a recipe is just a good guidebook. I don't want to paint by numbers. I want to take what's in the refrigerator and tweak it to what we have and what I think I'm going to like.
Yeah.
So
my mom, Rob, she always makes fun of me because she's like, I don't follow recipes ever. I use it as a foundation, and then I just kind of go off on my own. But I find that the best dishes turn out, when you don't necessarily abide by a recipe.
Absolutely. And so you asked earlier about how I like to prepare fish, and
yes.
So it's all over the map. But I don't like to sauce too heavily, and we do a lot of just where I pan sear fish, or saute it or bake it. But almost any fin fish I'll take, and if there's nothing else, if I don't have anything else in mind, I'll use Old Bay seasoning because I'm from the East Coast, and it's really got a widely liked flavor profile, and a little bit of that, and and olive oil or avocado oil.
Keep it simple.
Yeah, keep it real simple. That's certainly during the week. That's what I'm doing. But I also like poached salmon.
Yes,
French style poached fish. And enjoy recipes like that. Indulgent recipes too.
That sounds good. Well, Rob, when I come visit, you'll have to make me those dishes. So I will be waiting.
Right. Your invitation's open, so we'll have to work that out.
I just invited myself. Awesome,
Great.
Rob. Well, this has been so much fun. I'm super grateful to be a partner of Sizzlefish. Again, huge fan. Love everything you're doing. Love creating recipes with all of the fish. I do have to try that shrimp you mentioned, so stay tuned on my recipe with that one.
Jacqueline, thank you, and thank you for everything you're doing. And I like watching your podcast. I'm not sure I'm going to like myself on it, but
Rob, this is one of my favorite episodes. No, I really appreciate that. Rob, I do have one last question for you, and this is always my favorite one to ask, and that is, what does being well and strong mean to you?
I'd say that that's changed over time, and I hit a milestone this year, and so well and strong to me means being fit to keep doing the things I love to do, and hopefully be able to keep doing them for a couple more decades to come. And if that's possible, that's what I want to do. There's no sense in you got to enjoy life, and while you're here.
True. So true.
That's what I want to do. If you'd asked me even 10 years ago, it would be get a faster triathlon time. And
how many triathlons have you done, Rob?
I don't know. Enough.
I'm trying to run a half marathon this year. I did a few 10Ks, but there's a half marathon, Kiowa Island. I heard has a really pretty one. So I haven't signed up yet.
I ran the 5K in Kiowa without any prep one time when my brother was running the marathon. And I was in worse shape at the end of that than he was when he ran the marathon. But yeah, half's a good distance. So.
Yeah, I could do a half. I wouldn't want to do a full. I'd do a half. I'll keep you posted though. I haven't signed up yet.
Yeah, great. That's great.
Awesome, Rob. Well, this has been so much fun. I'm really excited to share this with listeners. And yeah, I'll let you and Will know when it goes live.
All right. Thanks so much.